So again, good morning. You are now in the building which is a Genome Center in Estonia. We have 3 institutes here. One is Estonian Genome Center, that is the Institute of Molecular Cell Biology, and the Estonian Biocenter. So the newest one from 2007 is the Estonian Genome Center. And beginning was the Estonian Genome Foundation. We started the Estonian Biobank already 13 years ago as a foundation because we got the governmental support, and they made a law, biobanking law, but government year 2000 had no money for biobanking, so we had to go out mostly to US, and also found some 20 plus angels from here who donated money. So, but biobanking law stipulates basically 3 things we should do. The first thing was just to collect information about Estonian people, and second, to analyze the genomes and to research. And third one was to introduce this knowledge back into public health system. So now the first 2 steps are done. We have 5% of population in the biobank, and after this lecture you can show and go and see this biobank. The second is the research. Last 5 years we have published more than 100 papers. Most of them are collaboration with many other biobanks and genome centers all over the world. And now we are in the phase that we have enough information, we have technology and people who can translate genomic information back to medical settings. So there is nothing is new in this world. Everything, also most of the new things are kind of forgotten old. And even this 4P medicine, which Lee Hood is advocating last 7-8 years, means that medicine has to be personalized, and that means we have to take into account our genome and information what is in that. The second is has to be preventive. So if we already know that something comes, we can act. We can do something. You just change your lifestyle, take a drug, visit more frequently your family physician, and so on. And genetics is the only instrument in hands of physician which has predictive power. If you measure blood pressure, you just see the blood pressure what is now. In 1 hour, it might be different. But if you do the genome analysis, you don't change your genome during your lifetime. You change the epigenome a little bit, you change something else, but your basic genome is the same. And if you give your chromosome to your children, so about 300 changes will happen, which is quite a small number if you take into account that you have 3,000 million nucleotides, and only 300 will be changed kind of de novo. But what is most important is participatory. So people have to take part actively to manage their health and life. So if people don't change their lifestyle, if they don't take the drug, if they don't visit their physician, nothing will happen. Everything will be same as now. So I proposed to the government kind of a vision that we have to use the information what we have and develop so-called Estonian chip, and I will come back to this later what it is. So this is a diagnostic device or predictive device which allows the physician to get information from your genome, but it takes into account also the differences what we have between, let's say, Estonians and Finns and Estonians and Germans and so on. And then we do a pilot phase, which is we use this chip on gene donors. So we have here like 25,000 people will be analyzed. And based on the results, we propose it to everybody from 35 to 65. We did a survey, and about 80% of people would like to do it. 20% hate it. Too much information to be present. They don't like it. And then it's not only disease risk what we can get from the genome, but also how do you how to react to the medicines. You get the drug, and almost 50% of people don't react as you wish or your physician wish. In basically, rule of thumb is in every second patient the drug is not working like expected. So are we ready? We believe that we are. In Estonia we have HEALS, which is electronic medical record system. We have all e-based infrastructures. That means there is a special infrastructure that we can change information between different databases using thing which we call X-Road. That means it's a secure data tunnel which actually Carmet is using to, and we are using all the time all e-health services. We don't go to the bank, you don't go to the tax, you send your tax returns all via using this X-Road. And also the medical information is exchanged between databases using this one. Genome analysis technology can now do the task. We can sequence people, we can do the genotyping with hundreds of thousands of markers just in just a couple of minutes. And scientific and medical expertise is existing already. Of course, it's never will be like final. And so we know everything, but we know enough to start. And we know the variants. And what is most important, people are interested in personalized genome-based health information. We have more than 50,000 people in Biobank, and we get every day emails, people are calling, people are coming here. They would like to know, what about me? What we need all these infrastructures what we have. And we also have a digital prescription database. That means if you go to a pharmacy and you just show your ID card, the pharmacist puts into the machine and immediately he or she can see what drugs you have taken or bought before. And now if we know that you have you get no help from the drug or you get adverse reaction, this can be put into the database and pharmacists see immediately that, okay, this drug is not good for you. Even if physician really did a kind of, let's say, didn't use the database, but just wrote the recipe. So we have infrastructure which really prevents patients to get not useful drugs. We have, I would say, we have pretty good public support for genomics. We have done last 13 years active educational measures. Almost every week we have something in TV, in newspapers. We are going around and giving lectures. People are coming here and see the biobank. We get more visitors than some of these museums in the town. And primary care providers are pretty supportive. We have a little bit over 800 primary care physicians, and 600 went through our educational program when we started the biobank. About 400 participated very actively and collected all this data and biological samples what we needed. And we have also technology, and we know that genotype-phenotype associations. So Estonian ID card, I'm not really stopping here, but we have 1.3 million people and almost 1.2 already have the card. Okay, so I already mentioned the Estonian Human Genes Research Act, and this is good law. Without this law, we won't be here anymore. It was difficult times when we had to transfer all this biobank from private foundation to the university, and the government started to support it, but it is like 13 pages and all translated, and in year 2000 when it was adopted by the Riigikogu, it was one of the best laws, and many countries followed this more or less exactly. So what we have in the biobank, if this is a pyramid of the Estonian population, and the gray area is showing how many we have in this certain age group, let's say men and women, and the color shows you how many we have in proportionally in the biobank. You see that we have young women are more interested in biobanking and epidemiological research than the men. Men don't really see it like they have kind of responsibility when we are asking why you are coming to the biobank. So women said, look, it's too late for me, but I have children and grandchildren, and it's probably a good thing, and I feel like I have to do something. Men mostly tell that, yeah, it's good for research, and I'm a little bit interested, but they have less obvious reasons. But you see also, we have kind of a 2/3 are women and 1/3 is men. This is public opinion. You see the red line is telling that they are more or less supporting biobanking, and it's from 2001 to 11. But look, this one. This is, I never heard about biobank, and still I told we have been in media more than 1,000 times, but still about 1/3 of the population, they just don't follow the media. Newspapers are expensive, probably. TV is more available. And for against, like a few percent are always against. 5 to 2% are against, which is good. This is what we are asking from people. The interview takes more than 2 hours. And this is the DNA we are getting. It's kind of Medushlin. So we get 1.5 milligram of DNA on average. And to sequence the DNA, we need nowadays only like a few hundred nanograms. So we have enough DNA, we don't have to go back. Now this is now one gene. I don't know what is your background, but I want to show that if you have, this is globin gene, and common. But these little changes here, yellow ones, this actually can cause thalassemia, very bad disease. And what I want to tell is that just one nucleotide deleted or changed is already enough to cause a disease. But we can now analyze all these genes, or specifically these positions, and we can get the information. So now we have a technology, we can sequence 10 human genomes in 2 days. You remember that 10 years ago, when first human genome was published, it took more than 10 years and cost like $2.3 billion. Now, even our lab can do it like, so in 10 years, technology has changed and it's affordable already. So we have 2 things what we can do. I mentioned that we have 3,000 million nucleotides in the genome 2 times, but we don't have to follow all these 3,000 million nucleotides every time. We know which positions are more variable than others. And we just can pick like 700,000 or million these most variable sites and analyze only this one. So this is 10 times cheaper and faster than full genome sequencing. If sequencing will develop very fast technology, probably in 10 years, then the genotyping will be changed to sequencing. And I believe the sequencing will happen just in the first days of the life. Now this is how the chip data are looking like, but computers will make a lot of sense out of this and just print out few lines what it means. So what we need, technology is, I would say, easy. It works, we can do it. So what is most difficult nowadays is just to interpret this data, and what we need is we need that computer will do it. So it's like plane in night, in rain and dark, computers can land the plane and just pilot keeps their hands in the pockets. Also nowadays, physicians have so much information they can't handle it. They can handle 10% of information they know about the patient. You need computer to analyze all the options. And this is what we call this clinical decision support engine or something. And there are already tens of different platforms which can do the job. We have to pick the best and work a little bit and develop our own. So how it works? It takes this in the family history, full genome information, clinical data, and algorithms will actually give you finally few lines in plain text. You have this risk, and I will show you later how it looks like. For instance, Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, which is hospital is big. They have 2,500 physicians and 1,100 residents. In Estonia, we have about 3,300 physicians and less residents. So it's one hospital in New York is as big almost as full Estonian healthcare system. And they are using these automated diagnostic support platforms and using it in pharmacogenomics. If you have a variant which is not good with certain drug, they just immediately recommend a different drug. So there are databases already in the world, but also international databases are based on most common variants, which means like 5% and more. In Estonia, or Finland, or Germany, or Netherlands, every country has their own private mutations, most recent ones. Also important, and they are not in the international databases because we haven't sequenced our populations. And this is what we want to do. So Estonian chip, why? So more than 10 years ago, this was a question, if we started a biobank, does it make any sense to do Estonian biobank? You are isolated far away from Europe, who cares? What is your genome? Then we went to UK and we did a collaboration study with Sanger Center. They took so-called European genome and we took Estonian ones, and look how closely this, and this is so-called linkage desequilibrium map. That means that actually shows how similar or different the genomes are. And you see the Estonian, which is the blue, this line, goes very well according to the so-called British or European, which is on database from Paris. So from this point on, we understood that, and the other people understood that we are like Europeans. We are not isolated. We are not different, small group from the forest. So just to go further, we did a larger study and took all these different samples from these countries and did very proper study with 300,000 markers and using finally a principal component analysis just to put all the population in the map. So one component is here, second is here, and this is Estonian sample. You see, we are not all the same. We are also different here. If you just put Latvians to this, Latvians are south from this, like in the map, north, south. Latvians are south, little bit overlapping when they are closest to us. Lithuanians are overlapping lots of Latvians, little bit with us. Russia, just across the lake here, so north, west, Russia, very close. Language is different, genetically same. So Russia from other side of Moscow, like 300 kilometers to Siberia from Moscow, Murom. Yeah, overlapping with other Russians pretty close to us also. Poland, almost the same cluster. You see, Poland, Baltic, Russia, the western part of Russia, very close to us genetically. Look, Finns. Finns are here. And here is the sea, If you go further, Finland is a large country. If you go north, there is Kuusamo place. This is really isolated already. And the Kuusamo are the Finnish, Finns have like 35 so-called Finnish diseases, and they are coming from these isolated places like Kuusamo, Salla, and so on and so forth. Czech Republic, already different, from this cluster and Finns. Sweden, not like Finns, not like us, not like Czech, Swedes are different. Germany, north from Kiel, south from Augsburg. So Germans also are partially overlapping, but still, Hungary, like Germans genetically, but language is Finno-Ugric. So linguistically close to us, genetically not so. Austria, Bulgaria, Switzerland. Swiss sample is coming from Geneva, and Geneva is a very cosmopolitan town. So we can trace, all pretty large area where Swiss are coming. France, Spain, North Italy, and South Italy. So you see how European genetic map looks like. Finns are over here, the Baltic Russian countries are here, and this is a long stretch of the Western Europe and South of Europe. But if you just take the global map, then, Africans are here, Asians, Japan, and China is here. So whole Europe is just one single flex. But if you just zoom into Estonia, you can see that we know the birthplace of people, and we can actually see with pretty high probability, if you do the genome analysis, where these people actually are coming from, which part of Estonia. So if we go a little bit further with and more data, I guess we can pretty much better actually predict where people are coming from. Okay, so now I have a few slides in these recent slides, but I had no time to translate, but I tell what it is. So we have 50,000 people in the biobank. We have close to 3,000 people with patients with type 2 diabetes. We know that they have disease. We know what is BMI, how old they are, men or women. And we developed a model how to predict the disease. And now look, and we used there 48 different genomic markers to predict type 2 diabetes. And look, if you are like 35 and you have very high risk, which is a red line, but this means BMI is more than 35, and here is BMI less than 25. So if you have the high risk, but you control your body weight, your risk to get this disease is less than 10%. If you don't control your body weight, your risk is 50%. And this is a big difference, and that tells that type 2 diabetes is mostly lifestyle disease. But if you are already 55 and you are here and go back to this one, I tell you, to lose weight is difficult. It's possible, but difficult. But if you are here, you just keep your body BMI low. It's much easier if you know beforehand. So this is the type 2 diabetes. Another disease, coronary heart disease, ischemic, with men, and the same thing. Now, if your BMI is high and you are smoking, your risk is 60%. If your BMI is less than 25 and non-smoker, your risk is 20%, but with same genetic background. So lifestyle is important, but genetics plays an important role also. Next disease, glaucoma. You know, this is eye disease. You lose, if eye pressure in the eyeball is increasing, you lose your nervus opticus. So we just only analyzed one marker here, which is quite good predictive marker. And you have 2 alleles, and you are men. Women actually have a higher risk than men. And if you don't have risk alleles, you see there is no lifestyle component, it's just genetics. And we have in Estonia 28,000 people with glaucoma, and lots of these could be prevented if people know that they have to measure their eyeball pressure. But now they go to the ophthalmologist only when they don't see anything anymore. Okay, now drug, pharmacogenomics. All expensive drugs, but let's take statins, cholesterol-lowering drug. Only, more or less like 50% cases it helps. But it also has side effects. So what we have to do is remove these patients who don't react or get adverse reaction, remove them from the cohort. The rest can be treated with the drug. That's the problem, because we have good drugs, but they are not good for everyone. I have to choose. I give you, this is the most scientific slide I have today, but I go slowly. So this is one gene, one receptor gene. You see, here the gene starts here. This is already coding area, and this is promoter area. And these are variants. These are the SNP single nucleotide variants. And if you sequence this, you see that in this number, and we call this haplotype. So we have like 12 haplotypes here. And more than 100 people were sequenced. So number 2 haplotype is almost half of people have this haplotype. Also here, if you just measure whatever locus we take, if I sequence you all, almost 50% have one, 50% are like one type. So the rest are divided like 33% have number 4 and 13% have number 6. And the rest is very rare. So that means that only 3 to 5 different haplotypes describes most of the population. That makes actually the prediction easy. We don't have zillions of differences or zillions of variants, which makes sense. Of course, everyone is individual and different, but in large groups, we have 3 to 5 haplotypes, we can describe almost everybody. Why it's important? If these people are getting drug, you see, this is one asthma drug which helps you to breathe, and depends which haplotypes you have. You get one from father and from mother, and either you have 4 or 6, which goes up here. This is differently how people react differently to this one drug. So that means we have to know the genotype before we give the dose. It's 1 tablet or 3 tablets or 2. This is important. So lifestyle. We also ask people what they were eating last week. This is food frequency questionnaire. And you see, here is a group of people who only eat soda, soft drinks, and a little bit sausages, and then bread. You know, and if you just go back and see what diseases they have, these have all high risk of cardiovascular diseases and high mortality. So again, this is simply thing you can recommend to people. Why don't you, eat more healthy food? Okay, now I have, I told we did with our gene donors, we have done close to 20,000 micro chip analysis. That means up to 700,000 markers. We have so-called gene map. And if we use one annotation database, which we call Prometheus, so there is a patient in our biobank with code and diseases, type 2 diabetes and hypertension. So database tells you have 1.3 times increased risk of type 2 diabetes and 1.7 times increased risk for heart disease and arterial fibrillation. So actually the database predicts very well this type 2 diabetes. The second one, the same thing. Here is a gallstone, diagnosis gallstones. And the Prometheus predicts this person has 6 times increased risk of gallstone disease. It can predict. Okay, so finally what I have here is we have like 3 legs. We have a biobank with lots of biological probes. We have also technology what we need to do. And we have, I would say, nowadays genetics is data. And I need lots of bioinformaticians, statisticians to make sense of the data. And only few technicians produce also data because also technologies like robotics, very high throughput. We don't need lots of people, but one floor is full of bioinformaticians. So it tells that it doesn't matter how much do you have resources if you don't know how to use them. So this is my answer to people. Okay, everything is very expensive, a small country can't afford it, but I guess we have enough resources, you would just use them cleverly. But finally, what about me? I did, this test myself, and I also had 10 times higher risk of glaucoma. But as a physician, I already suspected it before, but because my grandfather had this disease and was already measuring my blood pressure for a long time. Also, I had reduced metabolism of warfarin. Warfarin is very widely used drug which is against clotting, against clotting, but warfarin is used, it's a coagulation drug, really. If you just have too much of this drug, you're going to bleed. If you have too little, you get a stroke. So those has to be very precisely administered, and it's important whether you have a reduced metabolism or very high one. What about you? So there are 5 companies now in US working on 3rd generation sequencing. What we are using now is 2nd generation. And 2nd generation is still expensive. It's not $1,000 per genome yet. But it is expensive because the sequencing is going by synthesis. You have to synthesize, the DNA has 2 strands. And you have one strand there synthesized, the second strand, which is complementary to the first one. If you synthesize, you have to add nucleotides, labels, and every base has a cost. Now the 3rd generation wants to do it differently, that they don't synthesize anything, so it just takes a DNA strand and pull it through a pore. And if DNA like this goes through the pore, the electronic cloud which is around it can be measured as a voltmeter here. And so they can sequence DNA. The problem is that it works, but the they make still lots of mistakes, like 15%, which is way too many. It will cost 100 euros, and everybody will be sequenced, let's say, 10 years from now. Thank you.